From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Researchers say an experimental vaccine has shown to be highly effective at preventing the deadly disease Ebola. The World Health Organization says that the vaccine has been 100% effective at tests performed in Guinea. The British medical journal Lancet has published early test results and analyses of the findings. Norway's foreign minister praised the effectiveness of the new vaccine, calling it the silver bullet against Ebola. Norway is one of the several countries involved in the testing. Ebola spread through West Africa last year. The disease killed more than 11,000 people, most of them in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. Ebola is one of a number of highly dangerous viruses known as hemorrhagic fevers. They can affect many organs, damage blood vessels, and affect the body's ability to fight infection. There are hopes the new vaccine may be a success in fighting against all such diseases. The vaccine is known as VSV-EBOV. Beginning in March, it was tested on more than 4,000 people in Guinea. All of them had come into close contact with the Ebola virus. WHO officials said early results were so promising that everyone at risk received the vaccine immediately. The WHO's General Director, Margaret Chan, told reporters that scientists, doctors, and drug companies worked together on the vaccine. If proven effective, she said the vaccine is going to be a game changer. She said it will affect efforts to control the current Ebola outbreak and future outbreaks. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Midwives help women have natural childbirths at home and in medical centers. A group of midwives in Los Angeles, California, is trying to train more minority women. They also want more women to give birth at home. Only 1% of babies in the United States are born at home. However, interest in home deliveries is on the rise. In Los Angeles, for example, some women are choosing to use midwives instead of the usual hospital birth with a doctor. Midwives are specially educated in childbirth services. They begin as apprentices or students. Then they must pass state tests called medical boards. In 2012, Jasmine Lavender delivered her second child in a bathtub. She chose birth with a midwife because she did not want to repeat the hospital experience she had with her first child. Doctors delivered that baby by operating on Ms. Lavender. The surgery is called a cesarean section. Ms. Lavender says the operation was unneeded and hurried. She says she felt she was not given enough time to deliver her baby vaginally. Ms. Lavender's second baby arrived without a C-section at the Community Birth Center in South Los Angeles. Licensed midwife Racha Lawler established the center. Ms. Lawler says it offers general health services such as testing for sexually transmitted diseases or STDs. When the center first opened, there were about 300 licensed midwives in California. Most of them were white. But Racha Lawler wants to increase by 100% the number of midwives of color. She hopes to do this through community outreach and free help for students. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. A World Health Organization official says a new form of avian influenza is unusually dangerous for people. Keiji Fukuda is the WHO's Assistant Director General for Health Security and Environment. He spoke to reporters in Beijing recently about the H7N9 bird flu virus. As of late April, the virus had killed more than 20 people on the Chinese mainland. The country had recorded more than 120 cases of the disease. The WHO sent a team of specialists to China to learn more about the H7N9 virus. Dr. Fukuda said there is still not enough evidence to show it can spread easily from person to person. He said evidence suggests that the virus is more easily transmitted from birds to humans than the last version of the virus, H5N1. That strain first appeared in 2003. Over the past 10 years, it spread from Asia to other areas. It has killed more than half of the 622 people it has infected. WHO and Chinese officials say the effort to understand the new virus is still at the beginning. Chinese and WHO scientists say birds infected by the H7N9 virus are the likely causes of human infection. Most of these birds are poultry, like chickens. The majority of deaths and infections from the virus have been reported in Shanghai. Officials there and in other cities have closed down markets where live poultry is sold. Chinese officials say more than half of those infected have been individuals who had direct contact with poultry or other birds. How the other people became infected with the virus is unclear. The government has carried out thousands of tests on birds, but only a small percentage were infected. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Researchers have developed a medical device which they say can recognize malaria infections in the human body. The laser beam scanner is said to be the first device to identify the disease without a blood test. The test is painless, does not require blood from the sick person, and appears to be correct every time. At present, doctors use costly equipment to test for malaria. The new test only needs a person to place a finger on the laser device. Dr. Dmitry Lopatko is with Rice University in Houston, Texas. He says the scanner works by shining a very short pulse of light through the skin. The light comes from a low-powered laser. It shines on a very small particle called the hemozoan. The malaria parasite produces hemozoan when it infects red blood cells. Hemozoan crystals are not found in blood cells that are free of the disease. As the laser heats the crystals, they create small bubbles inside infected cells. Dr. Lopatko says the bubbles explode, making a sound that scientists can hear and count. He says that in tests, the laser scanner was never wrong. It also identified the malaria infection early, when treatment is important. The device is easy to carry and operates on battery power. It costs about $10,000 to $20,000 to make. Dr. Lopatko estimates that each laser beam scanner could test more than 200,000 people a year. He says that means the cost of testing would be less than 50 cents for each patient. An article describing the malaria testing device was published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Pursuti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. A deaf and blind woman from Australia is the first person to make a telephone call using a device that turns speech into Braille. Braille uses raised dots on a surface that can be read by touching it. The technology is being tested in Australia and the US. One test involved a simple phone call between two sisters. Michelle Stevens is deaf and blind. Ms. Stevens says the Braille telephone will end years of feeling alone and apart from others. She is one of 5 Australians taking part in the new trials, or tests. Ms. Stevens' vision suffered damage because she was born prematurely, or born too soon. She lost her hearing from serious ear infections. The Braille telephone system, she said, will be a great help to her and others. Ms. Stevens told VOA's Phil Mercer that with future developments, the phone system might be able to give deaf-blind people more job opportunities. However, the phone system is expensive. It costs about $2,500. The phones work by transferring spoken words onto what is called a dynamic Braille display. The technology was developed in the U.S. Christopher Engelke is a director with the U.S. company Ultratech. Soon, he will carry out the U.S. trial. Mr. Engelke explains that a deaf person uses the phone just like any other phone. However, subtitles of what is said appear on the phone's touch screen. Mr. Engelke explains that vision-impaired people would listen as they can, speak with their own voice, and read what is being said to them from the braille bumps on the phone. In Australia alone, it is estimated there are 330,000 people who are deaf and blind. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. The World Health Organization says cervical cancer kills 250,000 women worldwide every year. WHO officials say 4 out of 5 of those women live in poor countries, like the West African nation of Burkina Faso. Doctors there are now using a simple, low-cost method to test for cervical cancer. They say the test can save thousands of lives every year. Wakuba Wajaogo directs the cervical cancer prevention program at a health clinic in the capital, Ouagadougou. He says cervical cancer has become the most common cancer among women in Burkina Faso. But he says finding and treating the cancer early has become much easier. Doctors there are using distilled white vinegar, a common cooking liquid, to help them see cancer cells. The vinegar can be bought at almost any market in Africa. The doctors use a small piece of cotton to place some vinegar on the opening of a woman's uterus. The liquid causes precancerous or cancerous cells to turn white. Dr. Stanislas Paul Nebe has been using the vinegar test since 2010. He says other tests are more costly and require sending cell samples to a laboratory. At a medical center in Ouagadougou, women pay $4 for the test and treatment for cells that show signs of cancer. Dr. Nebe says this is a good deal when one considers the high cost of radiology or medical operations to treat the disease. He says medical centers in rural villages are using the vinegar test. Burkina Faso does not yet have information on how many lives the test has saved. But doctors in India have said it cut cervical cancer deaths by 31% in a study of 150,000 women. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Many people all over the world enjoy an alcoholic drink, such as wine or beer, during dinner. Sometimes people raise a glass of alcohol to celebrate a wedding or a birthday. And having drinks after work with friends and co-workers is called happy hour. All these situations are considered social drinking because they happen at social events. But when does social drinking become problem drinking? According to the World Health Organization, alcohol abuse kills 3.3 million people each year. The report also says alcohol use can increase the risk of developing more than 200 diseases, including some cancers. And it says alcohol abuse can put people at greater risk of infectious diseases. Shakar Saxena is a WHO official. She says the organization is concerned about drinking among young people under the age of 19. She says it is most concerned about what is called binge drinking, an extended period of heavy drinking. She says research found that 16% of drinkers over the age of 15 are binge drinkers. The WHO report also found that the highest rates of alcohol-linked deaths are in Europe. Finally, the report says less alcohol is used in Africa than in Europe, but it says the health effects are worse in Africa because of a lack of social support systems and health care. The WHO says countries can protect people from alcohol abuse. Possible measures include raising alcohol taxes and the legal drinking age. Controlling the marketing of alcoholic drinks could also reduce abuse problems. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Japan and Germany have the world's oldest populations, but neither country has enough trained healthcare workers to meet the needs of older adults. Now they are turning to Vietnam for help. This month, 100 young Vietnamese are going to Germany as part of a project to train what are called geriatric nurses to work in the European country. The trainees recently completed a 6-month language and culture class in Hanoi. They will spend the next 2 years in an occupational training program. If the trainees pass the final exam, they will be able to work in Germany as geriatric nurses for another 3 years. Germany is facing a crisis as low birth rates combine with a growing population of citizens who are living longer. About 20% of the population is over age 65, and that percentage is expected to continue rising. This is a problem that Japan also faces. Later this year, 150 Vietnamese candidates will go to Japan for 2 years of training at the country's hospitals. After that, they are expected to take the national nursing exam. Japan already trains nurses from the Philippines and Indonesia, but the healthcare system has been criticized for being too restrictive. All candidates must take the same exam, but it is very difficult for foreign applicants because few can speak the Japanese language. Many Japanese are opposed to foreigners working in some industries. Critics say foreign labor could lead to higher unemployment. But there is little opposition to foreign nurses. In Vietnam, there are not enough jobs for everyone who wants one. Most children are expected to care for their aging parents when they get old. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Bananas are often called the perfect food. The fruit provides lots of important vitamins and minerals. It can help fight depression and prevent muscle pain. Bananas also lower blood pressure and protect against heart attacks. And bananas taste great to most people. They add natural sweetness to baked goods and health drinks. Plus, bananas come in their own protective, biodegradable packaging. There have always been many reasons to eat bananas. And now, there is another. Bananas have a protein that might protect against viruses. Scientists are now trying to turn that protein into a drug. The protein is called banana lectin, or Banlec. Banlec attaches to sugar molecules and blocks viruses from entering cells. The team of researchers published their study in the journal Cell. They say Banlec might be used to make a drug that could treat a wide number of viruses. These include HIV, hepatitis, and influenza. David Markovitz of the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor was a leader of the study. He says that you cannot get the benefits of Banlec just by eating a banana. Stomach acids, he explains, will destroy the protein before it has a chance to fight infections in the body. Markovitz says researchers investigated the banana protein for its possible protectiveness against HIV. But they found that the protein fought off a number of viruses. At this point, Markovitz says there are no plans to test the Banlec protein on humans. He says they need to move forward cautiously to avoid doing any harm. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Could young blood be the answer to cheating death? It may sound like the story in a vampire movie, but now there is scientific research that supports the theory. U.S. scientists have discovered a protein in the blood in young mice that can undo some effects of aging in old mice. The same protein is present in human blood. 2 papers published in the journal Science discuss this protein called GDF11. Researchers at Harvard University said GDF11 improved the brain and muscle ability of older mice. This protein is found in high levels in the blood of young mice. In one experiment, the scientists increased the levels of GDF11 in aging mice by surgically connecting the blood flow systems of young mice to the old mice. Blood containing higher levels of GDF11 flowed among both groups. In another experiment, they injected the protein into old mice. The old mice formed new blood vessels. The animals' blood flow improved, and the aging process changed directions or reversed in every tissue the researchers observed. The scientists saw the greatest change in the old mice that shared blood flow with the young. Researcher Lee Rubin is a professor of stem cell research at Harvard's Stem Cell Institute. His team looked at the effect of GDF11 on brain tissue. He says the operation produced structural changes in the old brain, making it more like the young brain. Another scientist said that GDF11 repaired DNA damage linked to aging. There is growing hope that GDF11 might someday repair and renew unhealthy human hearts. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Researchers want new efforts to stop polio in countries where the disease never seems to disappear. They made the appeal in the publication PLOS Medicine. The researchers say stronger health systems and greater community involvement are needed in Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. All three countries face attacks by militants, political unrest, and a lack of trust among the populations. Seye Abimbola works for Nigeria's National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. He says it is time to share responsibility for ending polio. He has written that the World Health Community goal to end polio appears to be binding it to lessons learned about health systems over the past 30 years. Dr. Abimbola says parents have reasonable concerns about the safety of vaccines. He also says some families may have lost children to diseases like pneumonia, malaria, and diarrhea. A mother, he says, may wonder what the government is doing about other diseases. Dr. Abimbola says polio immunization should be part of a larger health program. He also says it is important to deal with people who distrust polio vaccines as human beings with real concerns, not as opponents. He says it is important to show militant groups that health interventions are necessary. For example, aid agencies say there have been cases when even the Taliban in Afghanistan has supported immunization campaigns against polio. Seye Abimbola says the Afghan Taliban approves of action against polio. He says this is because when a militant group wants the trust of the people, they go at it by trying to do what the people want. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Some kinds of mental skills naturally decrease as people get older. Yet, research seems to show that some training can improve such skills. A recent study also appears to show that the good effects of training can last for many years after that training has ended. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland
wanted to learn how long memory and thinking skills would last in older people who trained to keep them. The people were part of a 10-year research project. They were taught methods meant to improve their memory, thinking, and ability to perform everyday tasks. More than 2,800 volunteered for the study, called active or advanced training for independent and vital elderly. Most started the training when they were more than 70 years old. The volunteers took one of several classes meant to help them keep their mental abilities. One class learned skills including how to remember word lists. Another group was trained in reasoning. A third group received help with speed of processing, speed of receiving and understanding information. A fourth group, the control group, did not get any training. Earlier results had established that the training helped for up to 5 years. Lead researcher George Reebok now says the training continued to be effective a full 10 years later. The research team found that the people trained in reasoning and speed of processing did better on test than the control group. The effect on memory seemed not to last as long. Still, people who took part in any of the 3 classes generally reported fewer problems in daily activities than the control group. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. We all know that exercise is good for your health. Some kinds of exercise, however, may be better than others. Running, for example, may help to protect against heart disease and other health problems. Running also may help you live longer. Researchers say it is not important how far you run. It also does not matter how fast or even how often you run. Recently, researchers studied more than 55,000 adults. About 1/4 of the adults reported running regularly. The study found these men and women were less likely than non-runners to die of any form of disease, including heart disease. In fact, the runners lived, on average, 3 years longer than the non-runners. This study lasted 15 years. During that time, more than 3,400 of the individuals died. About 1,200 of the deaths were linked to heart disease, a heart attack, or stroke. One of the researchers, D.C. Lee, is an assistant professor of kinesiology, or the science of movement, at Iowa State University. He says, compared to non-runners, people who run showed a much lower risk of dying from some diseases. D.C. Lee and the other researchers found that speed, distance, and how often one runs made little difference in reducing the risk of death. Mr. Lee says slower runners and those who only ran once or twice a week were helped nearly as much as those who ran faster and farther. To stay healthy, doctors suggest that adults up to age 65 perform 150 minutes of moderate exercise every week. They say these adults need 75 minutes of running and other vigorous exercise each week for good health. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Meningitis is spreading across West Africa. The brain disease is a threat every year across 21 African countries. Now, scientists have found they can predict and prepare for this and other diseases by using information from satellites. Every year, dust storms blow across the Sahel area of Africa, and meningitis crosses the area after the storms. Tens of thousands of people there get the disease each year. About 10% of them die from the disease. Another 10 to 20% suffer permanent brain or nerve damage. Carlos Perez Garcia Pandu is an atmospheric scientist with the American Space Agency, NASA. Mr. Garcia Pandu says scientists do not know why meningitis follows the seasonal dust storms. But he and his team watched the dust storms from the satellites. Then, by also using other pieces of information, the researchers found they could predict how bad the next meningitis season would be. Nita Barty is with Penn State University. She predicts the spread of measles by watching city lights grow brighter. The disease measles spreads in crowds. In Niger's capital, Niamey, the population grows in the dry season as farmers arrive, seeking work. Ms. Barty and her team found they could predict how measles would spread through Niamey by watching parts of the city light up on satellite pictures from the brightness of their lights and cooking fires. Rita Colwell works for the University of Maryland. Her group found it could predict cases of the deadly disease cholera in Bangladesh by using satellite information about conditions in the Bay of Bengal. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. American researchers say contact with rhythm may help people with neurological diseases lead a better life. The researchers reported the finding after they carried out experiments with a famous rock and roll musician. Scientists say timing has a major influence on how the human brain works. And when the timing is off, so is the processing of information. The new study was the work of researchers at the University of California, San Francisco. They examined the brain of Mickey Hart. He is a former member of the rock group The Grateful Dead. For the study, he was asked to play electronic drums as part of a computer game. The experiments combined neuroscience with modern technology, gaming, and the virtual world. Mickey Hart wore sensor devices on his head as he played the drums. In another room, scientists watched how his brain reacted to the orderly beat or rhythm. They watched how his eyes moved. They measured changes in his blood flow and body temperature. All this information showed his brain's activity in real time. Mickey Hart is interested in knowing how his brain, what he calls the master clock, works. He has also been interested for years in the power of music. In the 1980s, he used music to connect with his grandmother who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. She had not spoken in a year. When he played the drums, she spoke his name and started talking again. Scientists say their goal is to use rhythm training and even video games to improve brain function. They believe that when the brain operates correctly, people enjoy a better quality of life. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability. People with autism have trouble communicating and with social skills. They also might repeat some behaviors and not want change in their daily activities. Some people with the condition need a lot of help. U.S. government officials say autism affects 1 in every 68 children in the United States. But the number of cases appears to be growing. Common signs of autism include trouble making eye contact and a delay in learning how to speak. Some people with severe autism never learn how to talk. Doctors have learned how to recognize autism, but much is still unknown about its causes. Researchers at Harvard University have come closer to finding answers. They found that women exposed to the highest levels of a kind of air pollution are 2 times more likely to give birth to a child with autism. Mark Weisskopf led the Harvard researchers. They studied women who were in the later part of their pregnancies. In all, they examined medical records from all 50 U.S. states for about 116,000 mothers and their children. The study found that the women who were around high levels of fine particulate matter air pollution were at the highest risk of having an autistic child. They found the risk was only when the mother was pregnant, not before or after the child was born. Mark Weisskopf says this finding does not prove there is a direct link between pollution and autism. But he adds it has increased his team's belief that there is a relationship between the two. Autism is believed to result from a combination of environmental and genetic factors. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. The sound of a mosquito can mean trouble in many parts of the world, but the bite of a mosquito can sometimes kill. The flying insect can carry diseases like malaria. The World Health Organization estimates that almost 630,000 people died in 2012 from malaria and causes linked to the disease. Most of these deaths were in African countries south of the Sahara Desert. In the United States, scientists are seeking ways to fight malaria. The University of California, Riverside is working to develop a more effective and less costly product to protect people from mosquitoes. Scientists there are investigating the sense of smell in mosquitoes. They found the insects use the same receptor to identify carbon dioxide in human breath and to smell our skin. Ananda Sankar Ray is leading the investigation. He says scientists tested more than 1 million chemical compounds until they found a substance that blocks the mosquito's receptor. The substance is called ethyl pyruvate. He says they found that hungry mosquitoes showed no interest in attacking a human arm because only a few of them could smell it. Genevieve Tukes was a member of the research team. She says it was not easy to find the neurons or nerve cells that recognize both the smell of human breath and skin. The scientists use special instruments to identify the signals that a mosquito's neurons send to its brain when it finds an interesting smell. Ananda Sankar Ray says a product based on ethyl pyruvate may cost less than the most effective treatment now in use. That treatment, called DEET, is too costly for most people in areas affected by malaria. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Alzheimer's is a frightening disease, not only for those who suffer from memory loss, but also for their families. Researchers in California say a new way of treating Alzheimer's disease is showing promise for reversing some of that memory loss. The new treatment combines Western medicine with Eastern philosophy, ideas rooted in Asian religions. Dr. Dale Bredesen is with the Eastern Center for Alzheimer's Disease Research at UCLA. He says 9 of 10 patients suffering from either Alzheimer's or other brain disorders noted memory improvements. He says the new therapy treats the whole patient, not just parts of the patient. Dr. Bredesen says there is an ongoing balance of the brain remembering and forgetting. He says 36 different things, including a person's lifestyle, can create an imbalance in the brain. This imbalance can lead to memory loss. Some of those things include a person's diet, exercise, and sleep. Dr. Bredesen takes images of the patient's brains, tests their blood, and asks about their daily life. Treatments include lifestyle changes and even medicines or vitamin pills. Patients were told to avoid carbohydrate foods like bread and pasta. They also avoided gluten, a protein found in wheat, and processed foods. Researchers told them to eat more fish and to take vitamin B12, D3, and fish oil pills. They also practiced yoga, sat quietly for 20 minutes 2 times each day, and they slept more. The people's memory improvements remained, even 2.5 years later. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Experts estimate that 275,000 women worldwide die of cervical cancer each year. Cancer of the cervix kills another woman every 2 minutes. 85% of the women live in the world's poorest countries. In richer countries, this kind of cancer is more often diagnosed early and treated. Cervical cancer is usually caused by the human papillomavirus. HPV is spread through sex, but a vaccine can protect against it. The vaccine is generally given to girls between the ages of 9 and 13. The HPV vaccine is given 3 times in 3 separate doses. It only works if someone has not yet become infected. Now, 2 big drug companies have agreed to lower the price for the HPV vaccine for poor countries. The Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, or Gavi, announced the agreement. Seth Berkley is the Chief Executive Officer for Gavi. He says the alliance hopes to provide the vaccine to 30 million girls in more than 40 countries by 2020. Under the agreement, Merck and GlaxoSmithKline will sell their HPV vaccines for about $4.50 for each dose. Until now, the lowest price for poor countries was $13 per dose. The vaccine costs more than $100 in developed countries. Kate Elder is with the medical aid group Doctors Without Borders. She says the new price is still too high. She says the drug companies have earned enough profit from vaccine sales. GlaxoSmithKline says the price has to be high enough so that company stockholders earn money on their investment. But Kate Elder says the drug companies should be more open about how much it really costs to make the vaccines. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Food safety agencies in the United States have launched an effort to end the use of partially hydrogenated oils. These oils are the main cause of trans fats in some processed foods. Health officials say the use of trans fats in food products is possibly harmful and can lead to health conditions that can turn deadly. Many of the foods made with trans fats are American favorites. They include cookies and other baked goods such as cakes, pies, and pastries. They are thought of as comfort food. Lisa Martin is a heart specialist at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. She says published reports have shown that trans fats block the flow of blood in the arteries and can lead to serious health problems. She says some of the reports have linked small increases of trans fat in the diet to an increased risk of developing heart disease. The United States Food and Drug Administration says some food manufacturers and other businesses have already cut trans fat levels in their products. But the FDA says a further reduction could prevent an additional 20,000 heart attacks each year and 7,000 deaths from heart disease. FDA Food Safety Director Dennis Keefe says studies on the possible health benefits show why trans fats should not be used in food. Man-made trans fats have been used in restaurants and in processed foods to improve the quality, taste, and storage time of foods. But Mr. Keefe says a growing number of food manufacturers are finding other substances to use instead of trans fats. Americans have 60 days to comment on the FDA proposal for ending the use of partly hydrogenated oils before the rule becomes law. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Frances Jensen is a neuroscientist. She has been studying the human brain for most of her career. But even she was not ready for the job of raising 2 teenage boys. So Dr. Jensen decided to study the research on the human brain to get some answers. What she found might clear up some myths or misinformation about teenagers. The first myth is that a teenager's body and mind grow at the same rate. When children reach puberty, that is when they start to become young adults, their bodies change. Teenagers may look like adults, but their brains take longer to mature. Dr. Jensen explains that the teen brain has a different structure and chemistry from an adult brain. The second myth is that teenage brains are resilient. At times, Dr. Jensen says, the teenage brain is resilient. It can recover from a bad experience. But sometimes things like stress and drug and alcohol use can give teens long-term problems. She says drugs and alcohol can especially affect a teenager's intelligence quotient, or IQ. A third myth is that teenagers are lazy. Parents might not like it when teenagers go to sleep late and wake up late in the morning. But Dr. Jensen says a teen's biological clock is set differently than an adult's. A biological clock controls the body's waking and sleeping processes. She explains that the brain releases a hormone to make you sleepy. An adult releases that sleep-causing hormone around 8:30 at night. But a teenager's brain does not release that chemical until about 11 at night. This leads to a later bedtime, even when the teen has to wake up early the next morning. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Ketamine is a drug that puts people and animals into a deep sleep. Doctors inject it into patients so they can be operated on. However, ketamine may prove useful for mental health too. A new study shows that the anesthesia drug may help people who suffer from depression. Researchers in Britain studied 28 patients suffering from severe depression. Most of the patients experienced a major ease in the effects of depression after receiving ketamine injections. Rupert McShane led the study. He says 8 of the 28 patients injected got good results. And Dr. McShane reported that 3 of those 8 said they felt better just hours after getting 1 injection of ketamine. The drug's apparent effects lasted 1 to 6 months. Researchers in the United States have carried out 6 larger studies on ketamine and depression. They found the drug quickly eased the effects of a kind of depression that is usually resistant to treatment. Carlos Zarate is a researcher with the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health. He says there are 30 different kinds of antidepressant drugs on the market. But he says a single kind will not ease all the effects of the disorder. As a result, Mr. Zarate says most patients with depression are treated with more than 1 antidepressant. The researcher says ketamine directly targets a brain chemical linked to depression. He says traditional antidepressants target that chemical only indirectly. The British study of ketamine was published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. One of the best ways to avoid getting sick is to wash your hands repeatedly with soap and water. Health experts say hand washing removes harmful germs and helps prevent germs from spreading. Some companies now manufacture germ-killing products like antibacterial soaps. People may think such products do a better job protecting them from getting sick. An estimated 2,000 antimicrobial soaps are sold in the United States. Recently, a federal agency called on the makers of these products to prove they are more effective than traditional soap and water. The Food and Drug Administration said antibacterial soap may be partly to blame for an increase in drug-resistant bacteria. The FDA also wants the soap makers to show how their products do more good than harm. Some studies suggest long-term use of antimicrobial soaps can affect hormone levels and may be linked to cancer. The Natural Resources Defense Council has taken legal action against the FDA for letting companies use the chemicals triclosan and triclocarban in soaps. Mei Wu is a lawyer with the group. She says the FDA is finally taking concerns about triclosan seriously. But soap industry representatives question the FDA proposal. In a statement, the Personal Care Products Council said it has already given information to the government. It said studies show that antibacterial soaps are more effective in killing germs. It also says the soaps do not increase resistance to antibiotic drugs. Sandra Queter is the deputy director of the FDA. She says her agency's proposal is an attempt to learn both the benefits and the risks of using antibacterial products. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. A new report from the United States Surgeon General finds that smoking tobacco is even deadlier than was known. The report says smoking causes birth defects, a leading cause of death among babies. It also links smoking to cancer of the liver and colon, diabetes, and other diseases. The first U.S. Surgeon General's report on tobacco and health was released in 1964. It was the first scientific report to link smoking with lung cancer and heart disease. Now, 50 years later, Acting Surgeon General Boris Lushniak has released a new report on how smoking tobacco can harm health. His report urges more tobacco control measures. The suggested controls include raising the price of cigarettes and banning smoking in enclosed spaces. The new report calls for research on whether reducing nicotine in cigarettes could help people stop smoking. Dr. Lushniak says studies have shown that smoking can cause diseases such as diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis. It also has been linked to an increased risk of tuberculosis and death. One of the most troubling findings is that women are now as likely to die from smoking as men. A woman smoker's risk of lung cancer is now the same as a man who smokes. And more women die from chronic lung disease than men. Those who do not smoke are at a higher risk for stroke when left unprotected from tobacco smoke. The latest research also shows the chemicals in tobacco smoke can harm brain development in a fetus. The Surgeon General supports more anti-smoking media campaigns and more help for people who want to stop smoking. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.